We are three friends exploring connection from the coffee shop to the podcast studio. I'm Amy.
I'm Anna.
I'm Erin.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Amy. Hey, Anna.
We are back in the podcast studio and super happy to be here. Happy you're all out there listening. And we're going to start off right away today with our awareness nugget from last episode.
Yeah.
Anna, what was it?
So it was the hand to your heart and belly at the same time and breathing. So did you do it?
I did do it.
I did it.
Yeah. It was awesome. I do that every night before I go to bed.
Oh, that's a good habit.
And I use my
so
Garmin
healthy.
watch. I tried so hard to be so healthy.
Like the healthiest, Erin.
But I need to, because I need to, or else I can't function in the world. That's why. I do all these things. Why do you do all these things? Because I can't get through the day unless I do them. So that's why I take good care of myself.
Well, you're winning. You win.
That's true. I was like, oh, you have good habits. Well, I'd be fucking crazy if I didn't. So that's that. So yeah, I did it before I go to bed, and I got this Garmin watch that I love.
You do love that thing.
I
you talk about it all the time.
I love it so much.
How is your stress today, Erin? I have not heard.
Well, let me see. Wow, my stress
we get
is
daily
doing-
reports.
Yes.
Daily reports. Oh, I gotta wait 30 seconds. So I'll
tell us in 30 seconds.
Oh,
I'll tell
boy.
you. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. 52. So medium stress.
Oh.
Well,
Are you nervous for this episode, Erin? Feeling some anxiety?
maybe.
All right, we're bringing it back.
Right.
Here we go. I'll tell you when I did my hand to heart, hand to belly. So I have been having crazy sleep issues. Not sleeping very well these days. And
That
I
will
wake
jack
up.
some shit up.
Big
time.
Yes. And I have been waking up like 2 a.m. I see 2 a.m. and I see 3 a.m. all the time.
Oh.
But I do the hand to heart and hand to belly during that. And I think it does really help me go back to sleep.
I love
Oh.
it.
Yeah, it's been super helpful.
That's
really
great.
helpful. I mean, it's not like automatic. It's not like right away.
Right.
But I do think that it just helps.
It helps calm
a
the
lot.
system. Yeah.
Calm the system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 I've been finding that I've been doing it when I'm in the shower and just trying to have like that mindfulness, and I shut my eyes and I'm
that's
just
good.
That's
like
good.
Yeah.
so serene.
Oh my god. Oh,
so serene. Just
There she
like
is.
so serene.
Anna's eyes have
Oh my
floated back in her head right now here in the studio.
All right, everybody.
Okay.
If you were able to do the awareness nugget, we would love to hear how it went for you.
Yeah,
Did
do you like it?
Yeah.
Love it?
Yeah, and
Hate
that was a free therapist tidbit.
Yeah.
So thank you, Erin.
Yeah, thanks, Erin.
Yeah. And also remember we also talked about hands on the face.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe some of you
I haven't
tried
tried
that.
that one.
I didn't really do that one either.
That is
Do you need to look in the mirror for that one?
No, you just have to, like, as if you were holding the face of, like, if someone was having a hard time, or your kid or
Aw.
your friend, and you hold their face like, hey,
I love
I
you.
see you, I love
Yeah.
you. Like,
Aw, that's so sweet.
I use that a lot with people in sessions, and it is the most beautiful thing
That's
ever.
Wait, do you hold their face?
No,
or
no,
do-
no, no. I
Oh.
have them hold their own face. No.
I'm just trying to visualize.
Shit just got weird in your sessions. It's not what's happening. No, they hold their
And
face.
now we
Got it.
spoon.
And then yes, right.
And now
Did I tell you
and
about
now
what kind of work I do
And
with
now I
people?
cup your face
That's
and
right.
tell you how amazing you
And
are.
then they walked out of my office and never
Everyone,
came
you
back.
can have this done at the Kali Institute.
Oh my god! Holy cow!
no face
No,
cupping at
no
the Kali
face cupping.
Institute.
No face cupping.
You know what? That kind of reminds me of sometimes when I'm super, super stressed, I'll like put my arms around my
The old butterfly
side.
hug.
Oh, butterfly hug.
There's a name for that, Anna.
Yes.
Oh.
It's called the
Butterfly
And then I
butterfly
rub
hug.
my arms like this.
Yeah, it's
Up
great.
and down, up
That's
and down.
soothing. Self-soothing.
Yeah, self-soothing.
Self-soothing. Good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. Hey, just so
All
serene.
kinds of tips
All
here
kinds
today,
of-
so
everybody.
serene up in here.
Hey.
Well, the good news is we're talking about self-soothing, and our topic for today's episode is the connection to ourselves, part 2. So we are talking about connection to self, spirituality, mental, emotional, and energetic parts. You know, just to
Just a couple things.
skim on the surface.
That's right. Here we go.
Just keep it in light around
Yeah,
here.
Totally.
Yeah.
So with that, we are going. Oh wait, we forgot to do our review.
Oh, yeah, yeah. you all have like been so awesome with the reviews, and we really, really appreciate it so much.
So
like
much.
it means so much, and it just you all sharing the podcast and the group, the Less Alone Podcast Group.com with your friends. It's so awesome.
It
and
is
just
amazing.
like sharing the tidbits from the episodes with your friends, and oh my gosh, it means so much. It helps us so much, especially like as a new podcast. Like this is the easiest, most helpful thing you can do to spread the word about what we're doing, especially if you're finding value in it.
Yeah, and then you can help other people feel
Yeah.
less lonely if
Yeah.
you share it. So that's the goal here. Okay, so I'm going to read this. It is a 5-star review by Katrina. Thank you, Katrina. The subject reads, "Like the convos I had with old friends, ... All right, it says, these hosts have an easiness with each other and the conversation just flows. I think everyone will recognize that feeling of being with true friends who share interests and a sense of humor. The thing is, these days, we mostly live in different states from those old friends, right? What a perfect vibe for a podcast about connection. Amy, Anna, and Aaron keep bringing up fascinating tidbits from news and research, weaving them with personal anecdotes and funny exchanges. It's just like a natural conversation among interesting, engaged friends."
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
nice.
High fives, Katrina.
Yeah.
I
Thank
think
you
we'd give
so
you a heart
much.
hug if you were here.
Yeah.
We might
Heart to
even do
heart.
like a double sandwich.
Yeah, double
Yes.
sandwich, heart to heart hug.
Yes.
We still need to get those up on our Instagram.
That's
We
right.
will. So let's go back to the
Yeah.
conversation topic today
Yes.
of part 2, connection with ourselves. Okay. So we're going to focus on connection with self, spirituality, mental, emotional, energetic, all that stuff. And one more thing that I forgot.
You needed to tell a joke?
No, I wish.
Why does a chicken coop have only 2 doors?
Why?
Because if it had 4 doors, it'd be a chicken sedan.
That's such a dad joke.
Oh my God, that is so good.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that is so good. I gotta tell my kids that.
My
Chicken
nephews were at
sedan.
camp and I was reading, I was sending them postcards, and I was like, we always tell jokes like this with my sisters and my nephews. And so that joke, I found it. I was like, that's the funniest thing
That's
I've
good.
read in a
That's
while.
a good
Anyway,
one.
sorry.
That, okay,
As an
so I
aside
feel like so far we're like boomeranging.
Yeah,
It's
boomerang.
like out in. But one more thing. We are going to have a live episode in
Yes.
Denver, people.
Yeah.
So if you are in Denver or you want to come to Denver,
Yeah, come see us.
Yes.
we're going to do a meet and greet and a live recording at the House of Pod.
Where we're at right now.
And
Yeah,
I'd
we-
like to give a shout out to the House of Pod. 'Cause
Seriously.
They've been
Oh.
fantastic.
They're the
So
best.
awesome.
Kat and Paul and Matt, the best.
The best.
Have
Matt's
been
not with
super-
them anymore.
Okay. Well, Kat and Paul have been awesome.
They really are the best.
They really are the best,
Yeah.
and they have helped us learn all there is
Yeah.
about pod stuff. And
Yeah.
if you were
Well, we
in
took-
the Denver area and you are interested in podcasting, this is the
Oh
place
my
that you want to
gosh.
come because it's amazing.
They've
100%.
been so
Yes.
great to have
Yeah.
access to professional studio and people who will answer like the little and big questions. Like, so we came in and did a tour, and then an hour later, we're on the phone with Paul, like, okay, we'll take your biggest package. We'll take the launch
the 8-week
pod.
training pack launch us to our first episode, and
Yes.
they did. They helped
Yeah.
launch. They helped get us there to
Yeah.
launch the first episode.
Well,
And
and just to
mostly,
have, like-
it's my favorite thing ever because Kat was my camper at Chile camps, and then when we came here, and then I figured out that
we should link to that camp.
Yes, and then it was the best. It makes my heart
Like, what
so
are
happy.
the chances?
What
Crazy.
I don't know, but so
All right, so the live recording meet and greet will be here at the House of Pod on what day, Anna?
October 29th, I believe.
October
Tuesday.
29th.
It's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
I think 6, right?
6:30.
6:30 to
6:30.
9 p.m.
Okay.
The address here at House of Pod is 2565 Curtis Street. That's in Denver, 80205.
Yeah,
So
and
we
we'll
would-
have
we would love to
info
have
on
you.
our social media
Oh, yeah.
and on our website.
Yeah.
So definitely come and meet us and be on the show. That'd be
so fun.
That'd be
Oh my
so
gosh.
fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so now here, boomerang back, right?
Oh, boy.
Here we go. We're
Oh,
coming
boy.
back.
We're doing
part
it.
2,
Good job, Amy.
connection to self.
Yes, yes, yes.
We're going to start off with a quote here from Brendan Francis. At the innermost core of all loneliness is a deep and powerful yearning for union with one's lost self.
Mm-hmm.
Good one, Brendan Francis.
I agree.
Geez, that's a really good one.
That's pretty important. That's what we're
Yes.
talking about today. And so, Aaron, what does connection to yourself mean to you?
I think it's when that's a small question. I think
It's very
when
small. It's the first one on the outline.
I feel
Starting easy.
certainly. I think when I feel grounded, so I feel connected to the earth, but then I also feel connected to something bigger. And I imagine, so in the mornings, I do this meditation where I imagine that I'm connected to the ground, and there's like a cord of light that goes up through me and connects me to spirit or higher power or the divine or the universe or whatever. And then I try to stay in line with that. And so when I can stay centered in myself, then I function, then I can take the day as it comes. When I get all like out of whack, then that's usually I don't feel connected into me. So all my stuff comes up. So I'll get my insecurities come up. I get like very reactive. But when I am lined up, then I can feel more responsive, less reactive, and I can pause. I'm also way more joyful. Like when I'm in my body and connected with myself, then I'm like, oh, the mountains, oh, these flowers. Like gratitude is like flowing, right?
Yeah.
And so it just feels good. And little things make like that's what feels good. So in a nutshell, that's what I got.
What about you, Anna?
So, gosh, yeah, this is a big, I feel like I say that every episode. Gosh, this is a big one.
Well, connection is huge.
Well, we do cover really light topics on this show.
Right.
Okay, so connection to self. Okay, so I can't help but think about my connection to like my higher power and spirituality. So I grew up in a house where it was all about Catholicism, and we went to church every single weekend, every Sunday, did like Sunday school, all of those things, and was confirmed in the church, went to a Catholic high school when I was in Nebraska, and it was something that was just kind of a part of my life. So like becoming an adult and then not feeling super connected with that religion and not like it was something that meant something to me. So I feel like my whole journey to getting to know myself and to be my true self has been such a lifelong process. And this religion or spirituality piece has been like an integral part of this process and kind of making sense of it. And so this idea of a connection to a higher power not being connected to religion and being able to have like a relationship with a higher power that means something to me and that I actually feel connected with has been a journey all by itself. And so like one of the times I felt most connected to like my higher power or higher self or the universe was when we were in Moab camping, and I was seeing the sun set and rise on these gorgeous red rocks as we were like camping along this river, and it was just so gorgeous. And I remember just thinking, I don't know what the heck is out there, but it's bigger than me and it's not me, and that's the most important part. And I totally trust it and believe in it. And so it's been a huge process to just be like, what is it that I feel like in my 20s, my early 20s, I was really just kind of lost and didn't know who I was, and then kind of hit bottom in a way. And it's been a process of like, oh, what do I really like? And what does it mean to like be my true self? And I feel like in the last year or two, I've been able to really, through, some different methods that we'll talk about, really get to know myself better. And through that, I've been able to show up in the world as someone that I'm proud to be and happy to be. And like now I feel like there's this drive and pull for me to want to show up as my true self in all areas of my life. And that's kind of my current journey and what I'm striving to do every day of my life.
That river road that you were talking about in Moab, I remember the first time. Have you been there, Amy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
what is that road?
Highway 128, I think. Highway 128. And
gorgeous.
You come around and it's like the desert. And then you come around and it opens up into this most magical and majestic valley that there's ever been. And I remember the first time I was on that road, I was with my friend and we just started bawling because we were like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life.
It's so
So
gorgeous.
here's an interesting tidbit.
What?
You ready for this one?
Yeah, let's hear it.
When I was in college,
Uh-huh.
a friend of mine and I, we drove across the country from Portland, Oregon to Hartford, Connecticut.
Oh.
And she had a big Chevy truck. And this is a friend of mine that I just had the girls' weekend with.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I mean, well, this is a little while ago now, but
Right.
anyway, we thought it would be a great idea to hike naked in Canyonlands. Canyonlands, buck. We only had our hiking boots on and a backpack.
Did you run into anyone?
Yes, we did.
Oh my God. This is such a good story. What happened?
We even have pictures.
Was it during the day?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What'd the people do?
Day. We just kept walking, and they just kept walking because they were passing us. You know, we were passing.
Or like, you look, make eye contact, and they're like, oh, hey.
Yeah, I think we were like,
oh my God.
and then we just went out on the trail.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
It
That's
was so
amazing.
hot, and we were like, well,
Were you burnt?
my butt got burned.
Oh my goodness. That is a great story.
Yeah, that's a little shout out for my friends.
I feel like we'd get along.
Yeah, right.
You would. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think the two of you with all those girls. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
So
you know.
good.
Yeah. Oh my
That
gosh,
is,
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So
yeah, how do you
Usually I'm the one. Usually I'm the one with the random stories.
I've got random stories. We got to wait for season 2, and then my randoms will come out a little
Okay.
more.
There you go. There you go. Uh-huh.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
So what about you, Amy?
Yeah, so I would say similarly to you, Anna, and you too, Erin. I mean, I grew up in a household where we went to church every Sunday, every Wednesday night, Sunday school. You know, it was just like praying before every meal, not Catholic, but Presbyterian and Lutheran.
Okay.
And so I would say
Like
that
both at the same time?
no. Mm-mm.
What do
just
you-
because we moved a lot.
Oh,
so
I see. Are they similar?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
Both Protestant, right?
Oh, okay.
But I mean, Lutheran is like super Midwest, I feel
Okay.
like. Really?
Super Midwest. That's
Super.
like their like slogan. Lutheran, like super
Super Midwest.
Midwest.
Right. I don't know if that's accurate, but I feel like it.
It's
Yeah.
like on all the churches.
All right,
So-
bring this back.
Okay. So grew up with like religion around, definitely went through the rebellious phase of that and thought, nope, not for me. This isn't even like real. And then I feel like early 20s was like the rebellious, like questioning what is real, what is really out there, all that stuff. And then just experimenting with all kinds of ideas and things and whatever.
That's what the 20s are for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But super angsty for me too.
Yeah.
Well-
I mean, I just feel like,
Train wreck. That's why I'm happy I keep on getting older.
yes.
Yep. Not as dumb as I used to be.
Kidding.
Yep.
No
Sorry.
kidding. No kidding. So, yeah. And then I feel like for me, I really had to dig deeper into kind of like what you were saying, like, who am I? What do I actually believe? You know, I definitely have been a person like the people pleaser type. And so really trying to learn about who I am, what I want, what I believe is a journey. I mean, it's like, I don't know if I'll ever get off that train, but it has taken me all different places. And I know I mentioned this in the first episode, but when I turned 40, I went to this retreat that was through Bar 3, and Sadie Lincoln, the founder of Bar 3, she led this workshop called Drop the Rock, and she really had us identify our top 5 core values and then our bottom, like our least important values, bottom 5. And, you know, my top core value was and is spirituality, because I really do feel similarly to what you guys are saying, you know, that if I am able to let go and like let a higher power, the universe or whatever, something bigger than me, if I can trust that and trust that things will be okay, I am a hell of a lot less angsty. And I feel like someone I know, she says, like, are your hands clenched and facing down, or are they like open and facing up? And I kind of feel that way about when I'm in my best self. My palms are, you know, my hands are open, they're not clenched, and they're facing up, and I'm able to just kind of ride the wave or ride this roller coaster.
Yeah.
Really. Which, oh my God, you know, obviously easier said than done a lot of the times.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so spirituality, and then that, yeah, is just, for me, it's something that has really changed over time, has really been redefined. And I think it's such a big like mindfulness, meditation, all of it. It's kind of cool that we're living today in 2019 where it comes up so much and like people are talking
People are
about it
open
in
to it.
schools and, it just has such like spirituality, meditation, all of that. I feel like it looks so different today than when we were kids. And really the only,
It was church
felt
on
like
Sundays.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and I think something that really stood out to me about that workshop that you helped guide us through is that the question you asked us that, Sadie Lincoln originally led you through is when you're your best self, what is something that's a priority to you? And then like thinking about it like, okay, now these based on who you are when you're in your best self, best place, what is a priority to you? And like looking at things from that point of view of like, who am I when I'm in my best place? Because I feel like it's so easy to be like, for myself, guided by quote unquote the wrong things when I'm not like in my best place or my best self place.
Yeah. And I think with that exercise, and we're going to get into like writing your own, philosophy or story, but I would say, so it's like spirituality, connection, gratitude, health, and learning. Those are my top 5. And I feel like, like if I can align my life in that way, then I know I am where I want to be.
Yeah.
Or who I
And
want
just
to
let
be.
everything else slide away.
Yeah. So anyway, so what have you guys done to like improve? I know I just talked about the retreat, right? But like what other things have you done to improve or grow your connection with yourself?
I have done a ton of therapy stuff. I remember that I was standing when I was 25, I was standing in New York City with my best friend from college. And we just had got a hot dog across from Central Park. And I was standing, she had been in therapy for whatever. And she says, and I was like, I don't know why everyone is in therapy here. Like, I don't even have anything. And then 3 months later, I had a breakdown and I was like, oh, good thing I've been in therapy ever since. And so it's just funny that you like make a comment on that. And so I think like the different levels of like what needs to be healed. And and it doesn't like you just have to, I think at virtue of being a human being, you have to be in, of course I'm in the field, but then also for my own, I think that if you're a therapist, you need to be doing your own work anyways. But I think like so there's that part of things, but also as part of my whole healing journey, I ran into this woman. I was at a Brene Brown conference before she got, did I tell you a story?
No.
Oh, so I was at a Brene Brown conference. This is before her Daring Great book came out. So it was 2 days where she talked in Boulder.
What?
And it was just, I don't even think it's sold out. And I like told people about it and they were like, well, I don't know if I can go. It was like $200 or something.
Wow.
And it's like super special. And so of course, I'm like bawling through the whole thing. So the second day I was like there by myself. So I'm like, oh, you looked for someone that you can sit next to. So I was like, oh, she looks nice. So I sat next to her, started chatting, and we were talking, and she's like told me what she did, which was like some sort of, it was, I don't know what her card said or how she described it, but it was like energy work, whatever.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay. And I don't know what you're talking about. And then I went to have lunch. And then at lunch, I was like, I have to go see this lady. Like, I need to go see her. And so I went to her and I came back and I was like, I don't know what, I just need to make a schedule appointment with you. I'm not really sure how. And she is now my Healing Touch mentor. And so I went to her and I was the first time I went, I'm like, I've never felt like so connected to myself, like in my body, my senses, like everything was like super alive. It was amazing. And so then I was like, what the hell? What is that? What the hell? Because I'm very woo-woo, but very skeptical of all that stuff.
Yes.
Like when I'm like, are you sure? And then I'm like, whatever, waving pendulums and shit like that now. So there's that. But so I went to her. So point being is that then I did a whole chunk of healing. And then I was like, I need to get trained in Healing Touch stuff. But I went to this woman who has that Himalaya shop on 6th. Her name was Sarita is what her name is. And she did like some sort of astrology reading. And at that, I was like figuring out what I wanted to do next. And she told me that I had healing hands. And I was like, huh. And then I had decided after that, not because of what she said, that I was going to get trained in Healing Touch. And so point being is that for most of my life, even though I grew up in a very like Catholic house, I knew that like I felt some sort of spiritual connection in myself.
Yes.
And that there was something bigger than us, but those two things never felt lined up. And so healing touch is all about like taking like universal energy. So that could be a higher power, universal, or it can be physics, because there's an energy about us, right? That connects everything. And so that is like my journey has been like the therapy stuff, and also like getting in line spiritually has helped my healing and this connect into. So point being is that it's been a long and bumpy road.
And it's become your life's work.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've been yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I would say, as much as like I did rebel against religion and all of that, I also am like pretty grateful that there was something there, you know, just in the home, and like I saw people who had faith in something, you know, and I do feel like as much as like religion and whatever gets a bad rap, I respect that people have faith.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
Whatever that faith is in, like whatever.
I volunteered with this program, this Vincentian volunteer program in England. And while I was there, speaking of like having faith, is something about it was important. And the nuns that we worked with were like, they had it in them regardless of what their beliefs were. And during that process, oddly enough, I was like, maybe I could be a nun. And then I figured out quickly that I could not be a nun.
Not happening.
Not happening. But that whole like spiritual thing is, I think, but
there's value there.
Yes.
No
But
matter what it is.
Yes.
So Anna, what about you and what you've done? I know we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but was there anything else you wanted to add?
You know, I think one of the biggest things I've done is being open-minded and like just thinking about like, you know, trying to get to the authenticity piece and like, who is it that I truly am? And like being open to that idea of like, just being curious about myself and like that idea of like trusting my gut and trying to hone that ability. And I mean, I've done therapy, like I feel like my whole life, and I've like all about the self-help books, and, you know, even thinking about my life today and how I'm considered an expert and wrote a book on how to get out of debt super fast. You know, it's like, that's something that I went to school for photography. Like being in the personal finance field is not something that I intended to do. And it was only because of being open to something, you know, greater than myself, or something that maybe this isn't the plan I have for my life, but maybe this is somehow the message I'm supposed to deliver. You know, like I feel like my life has kind of evolved in a way that I didn't plan, and it's better than I would have planned. And I think it's only because of being open to something else.
How about even winning the podcast contest back in July in Denver?
Right.
You know, like what?
At the Outlier.
Yes.
Well, that podcasting is not something that I thought. I love podcasts, but I never thought that
we'd be making one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That was all on a whim.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's
And
kind of
it's like-
crazy.
Yeah.
It's like listening to that. If you have a pull inside of yourself to do something, and like, what is that pull? And like, why? I don't know. My whole life I've just been thinking like, what is it? Like the podcast thing kept coming up, and it was like, okay, we got to explore this.
Yeah.
We got to like think about this. And, you know, just kind of paying attention to those things that have a hook in you, or like are pulling you. And it's like, why am I so curious about it? And there's like this meme I saw once, like it said, the things that you're seeking are also seeking you. And it was
good.
like,
I like that.
yeah, and it's
That's
like,
good.
oh,
That's good.
well, if I think about it like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so I think that,
What are things you've done?
well, I think also therapy.
All right.
To a lot of books.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of books. For me, I'm a talker. Like I like to just talk about thoughts and feelings, and, you know, and that really helps me like flush out whatever I might have going on inside.
Like a way to process
And
it.
yeah, it just helps work through learning about who I am. But also I think just a real drive to be real, which has been with me since high school. Like I just, like there was something about just fakey. Remember that comment that the high school teacher made?
Yeah.
Like
fools don't gather.
I don't gather fools kindly. It's
Yes.
like, come on, just give it to me straight.
Right.
Like let's just be real here. And like, I feel like I can only be real if I am real with myself, and that's not always. I mean, there's certainly times in my life where I feel disconnected or something doesn't quite feel right. I mean, it's interesting to hear you talk about things that are pulling at you. And, just in my recent past, like just having that nagging feeling, like something, of something not quite being right or whatever. And then it's like, wow, when I really like listen to that and then kind of am true to myself and kind of put my foot down, there's consequences, and those are easier to deal with or some are easier to deal with than others. But I think it's all just part of my process of getting to know myself. So there's a ton of stuff, And Erin, I mean, it's like why you have a job, right? Yeah. So we've talked about therapy. We've talked about books. There's meditation. There's yoga. What can you say about what you do for
Well, I think when we were talking about this episode, I was saying like this is the reason, a lot of the reason why I have a job is because, or why the work that I do, because to help people to find and connect into their true self and to find self-love. Because I think that self-love, that whole quote about how you have to love yourself before you can love other people, I thought was bullshit for a really long time because I didn't know how to do that. And then when I finally figured out like the whole self-love, self-compassion thing, I was like, oh yeah, that is like, it's an entirely switch. And I would say that one of my favorite things is that it's the most beautiful thing is when that clicks for people and they can actually for the first time feel that in their bodies and feel like what loving themselves and self-compassion actually feels like. It's so powerful. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so
I think about that even with the hand to heart, hand to belly.
Yeah. And so I mean, that's why I do the work that I do is because to help people to like work through their stuff and to remove those layers and to figure out how to nurture themselves and love themselves. It's powerful. And if people can do that, then they're just better human beings and they can be more in touch and more show up how they want to in the world without having all these shields that they have to carry around all the time. So
I really like the idea of parenting yourself.
Oh, that's so good.
Gosh, yeah.
And like being, the
being
parent,
your own mother.
Yeah, like be the parent that you needed to yourself.
Yes.
And, because we all have, our own relationships with our parents. And, it's like they may or may not have been able to show up in the way that you needed. So it's like, what if I show up as the person I needed for myself?
Yep.
Right. And how cool. We get to do that when we're 40.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a really good quote that we have by Brianna Weist that we all thought would be good to read. So I'm going to take the time right now to do that. It says, "Let's be clear about something. Not everybody heals. Not everybody becomes their best selves. It is wholly and completely possible that you die not ever having lived the life you wanted. If that scares you, good. It should. It should strike fear into the deepest cavern of your chest and reverberate out into every cell of your being. This is life. This can happen. If you do not want this to be your story, you need to act now. You need to work now. You need to change now. The time is now, not later. You do not have forever. None of us do. This is not a game. The risk you are really running is getting to the finish line only to realize you never did what you came to do. And now you can't go back. Do it now. Start today. Remember what's at stake."
Hey, Brianna, if you want to be on this podcast,
Please.
if you hear this, give us a call.
come.
Yeah.
That is so
Good.
So
it's true.
good.
Action. Right?
Yeah.
Man, oh man.
Well, and it's like, I mean, I feel like this podcast, the people that listen to this podcast are the perfect example of people that want something more out of life. Like, there are so many resources, but like, especially in this age of all this technology and everything's online, you can find anything you want. Like, there is absolutely no excuse to not move forward if that's something that you want.
Well, and I would say to our audience too, I mean, obviously the three of us do not have all the answers.
No.
And so, like, if all of you or any of you or one of you has anything that like you've done that has really helped you get to know yourself, or like really something amazing, like for personal development or spirituality or whatever that is, please email or call or like
share in the Facebook
share in the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Less Alone podcast group.
Yeah. I mean, we could even do something with like accountability. The other thing I thought about is like, hey, would any of you be interested in, we could run that workshop for them.
Oh,
the 5 core values workshop.
Oh,
so
yeah, that's a
let
great
us know.
idea.
Like, would you be interested? Or
So
anyway, lots of things. But
my point is, and I don't mean to be like harsh or act like we're experts on this topic at all, but it's like this stuff, the growth and getting to know yourself, it's for people who want it, not like we all need it in theory, but it's for people who want it.
Right. Yep. Totally. So with that, once you know yourself, how do you become authentic, or how do you show up as your true self everywhere? I mean, Anna, you said it was even part of your, like, it's your goal to show up as your true authentic self in every area of life, right? How do we do that? Obviously, there's ups and downs.
Yeah.
Better days.
Oh, for
not so
sure.
good days.
I think it takes practice. Like, I mean, I think about when I was a kid, I was so painfully shy. I mean, I talked about this in the very first episode. I was so unable to show up as who I truly am because of that shyness and anxiety that I had around other people. And so, throughout the years, I've tried to do things, like you said, Erin, of like removing those barriers and blocks. And it's like, I can't help but think about that idea of like, we're born perfect, just the way we are. And then these other things come in place as barriers and protectors. And it's like, then it's a process of removing those to get to your true self. And so, part of me wants to say, oh, I wish I never had the shyness or anxiety, but I also, or these struggles in my 20s or hitting bottom, like with, all in type of personality and like my finances and spending and stuff like that. But then I wouldn't be who I am today.
Right.
And so it's like those struggles and those issues have a purpose, and they all have worth to getting me to the point where I'm at today. And I don't think I'd be able to have this goal of showing up in the world as my true self had I not had those obstacles when I did. So what was the question again?
Just how do you be authentic? But I think like maybe, like having those experiences and then like being honest about those experiences allows you to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then.
Well, it also sounds like you, because Maya Angelou, when she was alive, talked a lot about belonging to herself. And so there's nowhere where she doesn't feel like she fits, because she walks into places and she always belongs to herself. And so it sounds like through your process that you feel like you're belonging to yourself. And when you belong to yourself, then like regardless if like fear comes up or insecurities come up or you feel slightly shy, like if you're with you and you got you, then walking into any situation, then you can do it.
Yeah.
That's
Actually,
super interesting. And it
is.
also brings up like something we had talking about. Can you be authentic while caring about what other people think?
I think so. I mean, I feel like...
I think it's the people like who are not, like if you two say that I'm being an asshole, then like I would care about that. If someone random was like, oh, you're a dickhead, I don't really care because they
like, well,
don't
you don't
matter
know
to
me.
me.
Right.
Like, of course I don't want to be an asshole in the world. But if you two have it like, hey, you need to really check yourself because you're being a dick today. Like then I'd be like, oh, like I need to take that into consideration.
But think about
like,
the history we have.
But yes, but who is giving you the feedback? And so like I can show up, but usually I'm not being an asshole if I'm authentically showing up.
So here's a good one. There was a post by Andrew Fiozui. Oh, sorry, Andrew. I think I just demolished your name. But melmagazine.com, and titled, "If you want people to see you differently, you have to stop caring what they think." In the article, it says, Amy Kim warns me that the only way to really change the way anyone, including your friends and coworkers, perceives your personality is to develop yourself until you don't care what they think in the first place. Quote, by putting in the work to be stronger and more confident person, you no longer care about what people think, says Kim. So it becomes a moot issue. So I think it's an interesting thing. I think for me, when I think about it personally, I can see in my life, like looking back when I was not being authentic because I was too worried about what people thought or what someone thought. And so I would quiet myself, or I would quiet my gut feeling, or I would ignore it, or, I don't know, just whatever that would be. But I think I agree with Amy Kim. I would rather work on developing myself so much that it just does become a moot point because I don't care what people think. That would be my ideal self.
Because I think when we have developed ourselves, then we're no longer looking to fit in. We feel like we belong. And so I think there's a difference between fitting in and belonging. And so especially when I was talking about belonging to ourselves, if we can walk into any situation, then you're not worried about fitting in with people. Right. Because sometimes, we've talked about this in other episodes, is that like, we don't need to fit in with everybody.
Right.
If I'm in a room of supermodels, say, like, I can still have a good conversation with people, but I don't necessarily like fit in with these people, but I can belong because I'm a human being. And if I'm like okay in myself and showing up authentically, then I'm going to connect with someone.
Yes. Yes, totally. So this other little tidbit from the same article says, Kim further argues that even temporarily manipulating your personality, per Clark's suggestion, comes from a precarious place. Quote, only if you're insecure do you feel like you need to manipulate yourself so that people's perception of you is manipulated, says Kim. It comes from an insecure position. Which I think is like...
yes.
Yeah.
High five, Kim.
Yep.
Well, and it makes me think about like relationships, with boyfriends and stuff when I was in my 20s, especially. And and like
figuring wretched online dating process.
I never did that. Thank God.
Yeah, same here. Well, like the whole idea of like, I remember in second grade, I liked this guy who, second grade, that's young. But he had spikes and a mullet, and I got spikes.
Oh, yes.
A spike mullet, because I thought,
do you have a picture of that?
Oh my God.
I have a picture. My second grade picture was like my grown out spikes
You never
mullet.
disappoint. I tell you what.
That's amazing.
Anna never disappoints with some random shit she talks about. Spiked mullet. And can you please bring a picture of that? Because
please.
Every episode, this is one of my favorite things. What the hell is Anna going to say today? We could have a whole Instagram series on like,
the most
what the
random
hell
things.
did Anna say?
Everybody didn't have a spiked mullet when they were in second grade?
No, but that sounds amazing.
It was. But I was like, this is going to be so cool. He's really going to like me.
The soccer haircut. When we were kids, right?
Hockey, it was hockey here in Minnesota.
Right, yeah.
Andre Agassi, is that the guy?
Yeah, tennis player.
Yeah.
He had a amazing one.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah. But it's like thinking about that, like, and even like growing up and being like, how am I going to like morph myself to get this guy usually, or these people that I want to like me, to like me? And it's like coming from that place of not knowing who I was is what that was, that total insecurity, and just saying like, maybe if I am this way, they'll like me, rather than saying this is how I am and this is how they either like me or not. Like,
I think about
to be really secure in yourself to be able to have the confidence to
I'm
say
there
something
most of
like
the time
that.
now, but
like
my God, it's taken a long time though.
It's
I mean,
so
I think
nice.
about, we've talked about some like friendships even that have like, I was not a great friend to everybody. But I also know I was not like my authentic self all the time either. And just how that all, just how much turmoil there is, like internally, and then what happens externally, and relationships fail. And
I was talking to a friend recently on text, and a relationship she was in failed, and she's like, this is what happens when I show up and I'm vulnerable. They can just leave. And it's like, but were you, I had to call her out on this, and I was like, but were you really your true self?
Right.
Were you really? Because I know a little bit more about the situation that, I'm not going to get into, but like, were you using drugs or alcohol to mask who you truly are? Were you like showing up truly as your true self, and then he rejected that? Or did he reject the person that you were pretending to be, and then it didn't work? It's like, you can't say, oh my gosh, I was so vulnerable and then was rejected, when you weren't truly your true self. When the reality is had you been able to be your true self, maybe things would have gone differently.
And ultimately, like...
I had to call her out on that.
But with that, like, if someone didn't want to be with me or someone doesn't want to be friends with me, I don't want to be, like, don't throw a pity party for, like, you know, like... Not that your friend was throwing a pity party, but like if the other person doesn't want to be with you or the other person doesn't want to be friends with you, then why the hell would you want to be with?
Yeah. Oh, easier said than done, though.
I know that. I know that it is, but ultimately, like for myself, I would not like when I was doing all the online dating stuff. I'm like, I do not. If you don't want to hang out, then like no, like or with friends or whatever. Yes, easier said than done because it's working through all those feelings and all of those things. Like I get,
but I do feel like being rejected or it's like that.
It's terrible. That's terrible.
That sucks. I'm not. Yeah, there's no way that that's like an easy thing.
No, yeah. Right. Not saying
and
it's
like
easy.
This is also like coming from the idea of like when we're able to be the best version of ourselves. Like how are we relating to these relationships or these rejections, like quote unquote.
Okay, it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, and it doesn't mean that it's like. But it doesn't mean you don't need to like work through all of the things that come up with the rejection because that's. But like. In the end, after you work through all the stuff and all the feelings, yourself. And you, good job, and you love yourself, then like you don't want to be with a person that doesn't want to be with you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me of another friend who is like so mad that this girl doesn't like him, and it's just like, why the fuck would you want to be with her? Are you kidding me? Like she doesn't see how great you are. No. Yeah. Like I'm surprised. Like I told him, I'm like, I'm surprised you're not fucking so mad. Like, why would you want to be with someone that doesn't see how great you are? You know, like that idea. It's like when you think about it, like the idea of like, how would my friend respond to this situation? Like someone who truly loves you. If they're like, what the fuck? This person doesn't see how great you are? Screw them. They don't even know. No, you should be just as mad at them as I am. You shouldn't want to be with that person. Right. You know, it's like, you're not seeing how great you are.
Yeah.
This is to build on that, but like, have you seen the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, the Queen movie?
No.
Oh, no.
So it's super good, but it's really good.
Yeah.
And so the guy that plays Freddie Mercury, he's having this incident with this, he's like talking to this other dude and they have like this moment, I think they kiss. And then he's like, well, when you figure out how to love yourself, then I'll come back and be your friend. And so it's like, but it's like, so, and then then you can watch it, but it was like such a good moment. And then you could see on his face like, oh, you're right. I don't do that.
Huh.
And it took him a long time and a lot of things to go through before that would happen. But I think that's such a healthy way to look at relationships. It's like both people need to love themselves before they can be together. Yeah.
Well, and I was just, as you're talking, I was thinking about how our friendship, the three of us, is so fulfilling in a lot of ways because it's not exhausting with like constant reassurance of like, you know, like whatever it is. It's like we can talk about things like, you know, most days we're not perfect humans or whatever, you know, that's not the goal. But like to be able to show up and not be constantly reassuring each other of like different things about, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm just agreeing with you.
And I feel like it's because we have done a lot of work on ourselves and it has been such a process. I do have to say, I saw this guy at Patagonia, this photographer, Win Wiley is his name. I think that he goes by the he pronouns. I'm not totally sure. But he today, or just recently, posted about his birthday and turning 27. And I was just like, he said that he feels like the most true to himself than he's ever been. And having this persona of Patagonia, dressing, you know, as a woman and having this persona. And I was just like, wow, 27 to like be able to be that true to yourself and show up in the world in your truth. Like it just seemed
27 is young.
I was like, damn, that took me a long time.
It took me a lot longer than that.
Yes.
But I was just like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Go you. Like,
go you is right.
That's so amazing. Like, I was just so, like, to have the courage. I mean, that's something huge to show up in that way. But I just can't help but think about how he's giving other people that gift of having the courage to show up as his true self. You know, anyway, couldn't help but think about him.
So let's just talk quick, if we can, about vulnerability, because I think that, you know, we touch on it a lot, but I know that we've talked about before how there's kind of like a time and place to be vulnerable. Yeah. It's not like you can just go to work and be vulnerable with all your, random coworkers or what have you. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think that you can't just show up and start spouting out stuff in a work environment. I feel like that's not necessarily, in my opinion, a safe space. And I don't know that it would go over that well in a professional environment.
Oh, yes, always, because not always, but even Brene Brown talks about like that you need to tell people like who you're vulnerable with. Those are the people that have earned the right to hear your story, right?
That's so
and
good.
So then it's like, have your coworkers earned that? Like, no, like, and so, or maybe they have, but then those are the people that you share with. But just like overtly being vulnerable, like in
just
the middle,
to be vulnerable,
like that's not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you have to have a history.
Yes.
Or like some kind of foundation.
Yeah.
So I think there's some interesting tidbits about the Rubin Museum of Art in New York in February 2018 had an exhibit called A Monument for the Anxious and Hopeful. And
That's
basically,
a great name.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
I know. The museum goers were invited to write down their secrets on small pieces of paper, and they could write or reveal their deepest fears and wishes. And I think that is one, like a really interesting and cool idea.
Super cool.
Have you
Yeah.
ever heard of PostSecret?
Oh, yeah.
So PostSecret, this guy created this website where he would have people could send in all of their secrets, and the only criteria is that things that they've never told anyone before. And so they would send them. I think he's from Germantown, Maryland, and he did stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks, like rooms full, I think now. And then every week he'd post like whatever ones stood out, and then they'd post them. And it was like the most fascinating, like it's such a great website just to be like, wow. And when I was into it, I haven't looked at it in a while, but when I was into it, I would like look at it every week because it was so interesting.
I think actually there's one for moms, young moms, like secrets of being a mom or something. I'll have to look it up. And then the other thing is, back at that Outliers podcast festival in Denver in July, someone was talking about doing that on their show.
Yes. Who
That was
that?
coming out of House of Pod, right? Or
was it?
I don't remember which show, but we should post to that.
Yeah, because that was, yes.
Yeah, all about just posting your secrets. But I think, so there is something called the beautiful mess effect. And it says, when others see our vulnerability, they might perceive something quite different than, say, weakness, inadequacy, or flawed, but something alluring. Alluring. What?
You're doing great.
Yeah.
Something alluring.
Yeah.
Tricky one. Tricky.
Alluring.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But so anyway, it's a whole phenomenon that people are starting to study, and it suggests that everyone should be less afraid of opening up, at least in certain cases. So again, if you have the foundation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's that whole Japanese art form, which I don't know what it's called, but when something breaks, then they like put it back together with gold because like the broken is beautiful. And so I don't know what that is, but it's so, I love that.
We have some follow-up research to
We
do.
do have some follow-up research to do.
We're
Good
going to do
nuggets,
some Googling here.
Yes.
Activate Google.
Activate. Yes. So I know we had talked about, one thing that might really help with some of that authenticity. I'm just going to go back for a quick second, but we had talked about how it might be helpful, and then also just like building the confidence to show up as your true self, about having a personal philosophy. Do you feel like you have that? I would say like mine kind of stems from that workshop, right? I feel like don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but I know my 5 top core values, and that is like a guiding philosophy for me, even though it's just 5 words. They're big words for me.
I would
That's
agree
great.
with, since we did that together, whenever we did that together. And I think about that oftentimes when I'm on long runs, like, okay, what have they changed? Are they there? Am I doing these? Because when I am living in that way, and so mine are spirituality, health, joy, financial stability, and connection. And so when I'm doing those things, then because adventure is really important to me, but I feel really joyful when I'm on adventures. And so that feels good. And trail running, super important to me, but that's under health. So is eating well. And so like things fall in those places.
Yes.
But when I'm living in that way, then I can be authentically in myself. I'm connected spiritually. Like I feel the best version of myself. And so I do agree with you on that.
Yeah, for sure. Gosh, I feel like, I can't help but think about that workshop and how it's like that's truly the whole point of it is to develop a personal philosophy that you go back to time and time again and you say, how is it that I want to live and what is going to be my priority? Because
And where is my time going?
And the best version of yourself when you were talking about the before is huge.
Yeah,
Yes.
because it's like when I am the best version of myself, what does that look like? What are the things that I'm prioritizing? Because I feel like, especially in our digital age, this has come up throughout our whole season of, these distractions and being pulled in all these different directions. But if you have if you have a personal philosophy of like, what do I want my life to look like and what do I want to prioritize, then that's something that you can't help but let everything else slide away once you have that defined. And we definitely should offer this as a workshop to our listeners. My personal philosophy, connection is huge. And, using them as like an umbrella, like you said, Aaron, is really helpful. And joy is one of the big ones. Another one that has come up quite a lot in this podcast is the idea of not taking things personally. And I always go back to that.
Yeah, you do say that a lot.
And holy cow, it's helpful.
Super helpful.
Yeah. And then also being open to that internal pull. So I feel like those are the things that are kind of like my philosophy. And I mean, that internal pull.
Is that openness or curiosity?
Kind of both. I would think it's a curiosity about what that pull is and why, and like trusting that. And it's definitely something that I have not been very good at throughout my entire life. And I think it's something that has taken me a lot of practice to listen to it. And, some decisions looking back on my life, it's like, you know what? I totally did not trust my gut on that. Like I knew then and I didn't listen to that. And it's like, all right, I did not listen to that. So it's like, it really makes me want to be better about that going forward. So, and it's like, what would it look like if I did show up as my true self in every area and really listen to my gut and my instinct and and show up as who I was put on this earth to be.
That's what Freddie Mercury talks about in that
really?
movie. Yeah, he talks about, he totally talks about that, like, because he was he was
oh shit, I gotta watch
that. He was an amazing performer. He had a lot of personal stuff, but he was like, this is who I was meant to be on this earth.
That is the goal.
Yeah.
Who am I meant to be?
Yes, on this earth.
What was I put on this world?
And you could tell when he was like, that dude, that's an actor.
That gets me fired up.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yes.
So to help all of you out there, there are 4 questions you can ask yourself. And this is coming from Jessica Stillman on Inc.com. And let's see. So she has 4 questions that you can answer that will help you develop your own personal philosophy. The first one is, when I'm at my best, what beliefs lie just underneath the surface of my thoughts and actions? Number 2, who demonstrates characteristics and qualities that are aligned with mine? Number 3, what are those qualities? And number 4, what are your favorite quotes or your favorite words? So, good, helpful hint or whatever.
Yeah,
I guess.
And then maybe at some point we'll get the workshop available to our listeners.
Definitely.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I think that'd be super helpful.
Yeah. All right. So you've got 4 questions to ask yourself to help with figuring out your own personal philosophy. And we definitely want to end or, wrap things up now, since this is our last episode of the season.
Yeah, season 1 finale. Holy cow.
Oh my gosh.
We did it.
We did it. Yeah, right? It's been a whirlwind.
And you're all here listening.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So before we go on to like the final nugget or tidbit we're going to leave everybody with, what would you say, Anna? Why don't you start us off with we're wrapping up our first season. What was your big takeaway, or what did you really get from these 10 episodes.
Yeah. So I feel like I can't help but think about connection in every single area of my life. And, because of this podcast and like hearing the feedback from other people too of like how it's affected their life and their connections, which is so cool. But probably the biggest thing that I've gotten personally from this whole podcast, this season 1, is from that episode about the internal drive and the connection to the internal drive, and how on that episode I shared how I feel like, while I excel at pretty much everything I attempt in my life, thank God, like it's something that's a gift and sometimes not a gift. But being a mediocre mom is something that was really hard to talk about on that episode. And I started, since that episode, and having that, deep, big sigh of like, oh, dear God, here I'm sharing something super, super personal. I started showing up in my mothering in a way that I feel more proud about. And I can go to sleep at the end of the day and be like, I showed up as the mom I want to be to Henry. And
that makes my heart so happy.
Made like such a huge difference to examine that and say, here's an area that I really, truly need to work on for not just my sake, but for my son's sake. And so one of the main things I did is, I talked about it in the following episode about some of the things I did right away, but I've been doing this idea of like the fake it till you make it. And I've been calling myself a super mom. And just changing the language around that has been very powerful, because you had talked about, Amy, about the trap that we get in of like not being enough and like that, succumbing to the pressure that other people put on us or society puts on us. And it's like, what if right now I say I'm a super mom and I go with it?
Yeah.
And then, oh, wouldn't you know it, I start showing up as a super mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and I start seeing myself as a super mom, and suddenly my actions are different.
Yeah.
And so I'm now showing up as the mom I want to be and feeling proud about that at the end of the day. So it goes without saying that's probably the biggest thing that I've gotten from season 1.
That's awesome. Erin, what about you?
I think there's twofold, is that it has been incredible to hear about connection, like to see the group on Facebook with the podcast grow and what people are having to say and the feedback, just to hear about what people think of the podcast and like both positive and negative, like what are they bringing to it, that's been really great. And the other part of that is I feel like we wrote all these business goals at the beginning of the year, and one of my personal and professional goals was to come out of hiding and to stop hiding.
Wow.
Yes.
You have done that.
Right. To come out of hiding, and not that I wasn't showing up as myself, but I like wanted to step into myself, into the world and not be scared.
Yeah.
And so this podcast in particular, like I can't hide on here. And so this has been so hard for me to do in a lot of ways, because I would have these conversations with both of you if we were having coffee, but to have these conversations and just like put them out into whatever, that has been the biggest thing, because it feels like terrifying and really good all at the same time. And
terrifying and exhilarating.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's been so that's been good. And also too, the fact that I wrote down that I wanted to hang out. You were 2 of my 3 people that I wanted to hang out more with. So I did this business thing at the beginning of the year, and it was like, list 3 people that you want to hang out with more, and I put Anna and Amy on the list. And so
who was your third person?
I don't know.
Oh,
yeah. So they got pushed to the side. But
we take up all your time.
I'm like, where are they?
Yeah, you're right. And so the 2 of them, and then the goal, because like I did a vision board, all that stuff, was to come out of hiding and like to show up. And so what would that look like if I did? And so I had no idea that this podcast was even going to happen. And so that's amazing. A direct result of that. So so that's what I got.
It's good.
Yeah.
What about you, Amy?
It's a big, deep breath right there. This podcast for me this season has been full of, oh man, like irony and examination and honesty. And, like I've mentioned a few times throughout, we recorded our first episode, and then my life pretty much turned upside down. And then we continued to record episodes 2 through 10 while I have been going through this transition which someday I'll be more ready to talk about, I suppose. But the podcast just carried me through it. It gave me a lot of, connection, which is so important to me. And I was not having connection at all, really, like if I'm honest about it, in an area of my life where I really needed it. And I got to be with you guys, and I got to get connected and feel love, and
There's lots of that.
yeah. And I really getting emotional here. Hang on.
Doing great.
Yeah, I just feel like season 1 carried me through this transition, and there's a long road ahead, but the gifts that have, come out of this for us, and just thinking about like people that we could be reaching and helping, and, all of that is.
I feel like it's bigger than us. Like I've seen how it's helped carry
it for sure feels like it's bigger than us.
in like this, super hard situation you've been in, how it's like helped as like a positive, fun thing that you've been able to, have in your life. And then just thinking about like
the energy around it feels like we're in the flow of things.
Yeah.
And that.
Well, even just like how everything with the podcast has happened, like even winning that pitch contest, we've talked about it a couple times in this episode, but like back in July, and like how things just have seamlessly happened. And it's like, how and why is this happening? Like something bigger than us, like talk about like in the flow of like, a higher power or the universe. And just like, this is something that's clearly needed for us personally. It's been a huge gift. But then to think like how it could be reaching so many people and helping people.
Right.
And just having like its own purpose as its own thing, guiding other people. Like, I just think like for us to be open and curious. I mean, just talking about the exact topic of this episode of being open to this pull of like, why did this happen and how?
And for us to have to be connected into ourselves to be able to show up like this, like that's part of all the stuff that we're talking about on this episode is like, is what, like, this is what it's all been for this whole first season. And it will continue to be.
And it's just unfolded.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with that, we want to thank all of you, our listeners, first and foremost.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And
it's because of you that this exists.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, undoubtedly. And we do have a couple things. We will be having an article in 5280 magazine.
A local Denver magazine.
Denver magazine. And also, like we mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to have a meet and greet or a live recording session at House of Pod on
October 29th from 6:30 to 9.
And the address is 2565 Curtis Street in Denver. Yeah. So be great to see all of you there.
Yeah, come and be on the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it'd be so fun.
So fun.
You have to come and talk to us.
Yes.
We want to get to know you. We want to take some selfies with you.
Sandwich hugs?
Yes.
Sandwich
if you're a
hugs.
hugger,
Premium hugs.
We'll give them out.
Premium hugs, that's right.
And then finally, our final season tidbit is Connection Bingo.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
And this is by @Lisa Oliver Therapy on Instagram.
Her Instagram is so good.
Yeah.
@Lisa Oliver Therapy.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that will be on the show notes, right?
Yeah. Finding ways to connect with people in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have
really,
fun.
really awesome.
What? Have fun playing some bingo.
And we will be back when we're back.
Until next time.
Yes. We'll be back. Don't worry.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
So don't forget, go to lessalonepodcast.com to access the show notes, links, and resources from this episode.
Yep.
Hey-o.
And that is season 1.
Season
Woo,
1.
Peace
my
out.
gosh.
Thank you.
Bye.
Woo.
Thanks for listening. You can find more about this episode and a way to connect to the community at lessalonepodcast.com. And if you like us, don't forget to subscribe and be sure to leave a review. It helps other people find us and could be just what they need.